You know, I don't think there's a game that enjoys a more seductive, more intoxicating, more blindingly wonderful honeymoon period than the early access survival simulator hunter-builder, Vrising. Those first few steps into an unknown world, the first few loops of exploration, crafting and combat, and that moment a few hours in where you step back and marvel at your little shack of a home, complete with braziers for ambience, whatever the hell this thing is, and the fact that although you're deathly allergic to the sun, you didn't put a roof on top of all those walls you built. But like how vampires live long enough to truly lose an appreciation for what life is, Vrising emerges from the darkness of the early access survival simulator hunter-builder genre after I've already chopped every tree, mined every ore, and crafted my way along an infinite number of weapon trees in a million games just like it. And frankly, it left me wishing for a stake to the heart, rather than endless vampiric rule. Like most early access survival simulator hunter-builder games, you are insert name here. But also a member of a previously all-powerful vampire race that ruled the lands of Vardarin, before the vamps were driven back into their shadowy castles, like Sauron from Lord of the Rings. Thing is, being anything other than all-powerful isn't terribly appealing for this dynasty of bloodsuckers. So you've risen again to reclaim these lands the only way an all-powerful vampire knows how. By progressing along clearly structured upgrade trees, building sawmills, and dropping all your loot 20 minutes away from a respawn point upon death. Do you remember the part of Dracula where the titular count ran away from a stone golem because it was a way higher level than him? No? Well, what about in Nosferatu, where Count Orlok goes and spends 2 hours chopping down trees because he wanted to build a smelter? Games like Vrising always have the honeymoon period, but you know what else they have? The moment of the exasperated sigh. The moment when you stop playing and say, you want me to collect how much copper ore? Maybe I'm getting too caught up in the mythology of the whole thing. But this isn't very vampy, guys. I feel like a chump. After creating my Vampire Lord, I loaded into a PvE server, though the game supports both offline play and a few other multiplayer modes, and worked my way through the game's early tutorial. As I tramped through the forests of the game's opening area, I realized that Vardarin has bigger problems than vampires like me. It's got a housing crisis. It seemed like I couldn't travel more than 15 seconds before once again standing at the gore-soaked gates of another player's gothic monstrosity of a castle. For my first hour of play, I literally had nowhere to build my own castle of death and despair. The hedonistic satisfaction of vampiric life in Vrising is shrouded not by mists and batwings, but by resource management and the banalities of survival games. If you're a fan of survival builders, all the hits are here. You'll place walls at 90-degree angles, establish different workbenches and stations to refine materials and build gear, and this is a little out of left field, but feed blood directly to the castle itself. Be warned, however, as if you thought you could just dip into Vrising for a bit of nocturnal fun without the grindy bits, you'll be sorely disappointed, as Vrising feels as though it's more interested in the daily tasks of a vampire's familiar than the Lord Vampire themselves. Outside of your castle walls, Vrising has a chunky, old-school hack-and-slash looter feel, which took me all the way back to my days playing Diablo 2 and custom multiplayer modes in Warcraft 3. You've got a hotbar for different spells and attacks, and the game employs an interesting blood type mechanic, which means different enemies give you different benefits if you feed on them, like warrior blood boosting your physical attack, or scholar blood boosting your spellcasting. Vrising is always looking to push against the weaknesses of your character by really leaning into the game's day-night cycle, forcing you to duck and weave around patches of sunlight in the daytime. But pressure like that doesn't really dovetail with anything satisfying in my experience. More often than not, I've found myself desperately maneuvering through the forest underbrush in order to do something as simple as smash a bunch of rocks. Or just get back to my body. It's clear that content crypt in Vrising runs deep. The map itself is enormous, minor mechanics continue to crop up well into the mid and late game, and the hack and slash nature of the combat is decently satisfying in a way that kind of combat often is. However, to get through its grindy outer layer to the gooey red inside, it's a shame the game didn't find some way around the same old tiresome survival mechanics. Too often I just felt they weighed down the moments I started to feel empowered or excited for what might be around the corner. Because I just knew it would mean more gathering and crafting, night after day after night. Now, Vrising is in early access, so there's always the chance that the full release will address the banality of Victorian vampire life. But right now, let's just say reclaiming Vardarin feels like a fate worse than death. Pass.